Now, first I had to discover the phenomena of septemics. Because you have to realize in science, there's a phenomena or phenomenon, and then after you discover the phenomenon, then you have to do something with it. As an example, Newton...
I think you want to do that individually, is that right, Jim?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's going to pop into a room, and if you want to step out of your group for 5 minutes to ask a question, you can. Sandy, do we need to organize some groups here?
I think we're pretty well organized, aren't we?
Does every group have at least three people with a writing sample, and if maybe a fourth if not?
This group over here has two.
Two? George, do you have a group? Oh, George is going to join? Okay.
How many need to combine three?
How many writing samples? We have three, I have one, and then, just do it, does all? Okay. Okay.
And here we have two. And do you have one tonight? Do you have one tonight? Yeah.
Do I have what?
A writing sample.
Yeah, but I'm joining now.
Okay.
All right. Agenda. Does somebody have an agenda really quick I can look at? Okay. So, is there anybody who was not here last time? Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to actually pick up from your table, and we have several breakout rooms, and I think there might be one room taken, Sandy. I'm not sure because there's another group meeting here at the church tonight. But your group can kind of get up. One group can stay here. You can pick up and find another group, and then you'll go off. And so in each group, you need a timer. So I'll go ahead and lead for my group. Lionel, Jean. Okay, you got to me? And who about in this group?
Don.
Don? You got it? Okay. Sandy's going to keep track of who's leading when I'm split that out. Okay. George, are you going to join over? Yeah, you're joining over here. Okay. All right, so I guess everybody knows what to do. So here's what you're going to do. When you break out into your group and you kind of do really quick math, if there's 2 people who have samples, that means each of those people get 30 minutes. And if you finish up early, just talk about your writing, talk about what you're doing, it's okay. If you have 3 people, then you split it up, right? 1 hour divided by 3, 20 minutes. So, and then whoever's group leader kind of keeps track of that time, and then we all come back here at 8:05. So does anybody have any questions? All right. Let's look at each other's writing.
I gave it to colleagues of mine who all had graduate degrees, and I was pleasantly surprised that they were all favorably impressed. So then my mission began, because I realized I could go from helping people by the hundreds to helping people by the millions. And that's why I'm here tonight. Now, there are a lot of barriers in writing, which I'm sure many of you already know. But this book has some special barriers. First of all, in the actual writing itself, that was not too hard for me because I sort of knew how to do that. But as I was writing it, I was engineering the subject, so there were many rewrites. And I would get feedback from colleagues, from clients, from people who looked at the transcript over a period of years and would continually rewrite it. So this became a mission for me to get this data out, because I knew in '95 that the book would change the life of anyone who read it. And that is exactly what happened. I have 26 years of results with that. Now, think about this. Most people don't read books. Of the people who do read books, most of them read fiction books. Of the people who read non-fiction books, most of them earn a niche, meaning psychologists read psychology books, mathematicians read mathematics books, historians read history books. This subject does not fit into any previous niche. It is a new subject. So this is a big barrier that I had to overcome. Trying to get someone to even pay attention to a new subject is a difficult thing. Because most people are in a box. They're comfortable in that box. And if you give them something that's absolutely new, you're asking them to get out of this comfortable box, which most people are not willing to do. Which is why I've been doing interviews, to communicate to people that this subject exists, and that it's in a book that's accessible to the general public. Now, engineering it took a couple of decades. And the reason for that is I discovered this material empirically. As I mentioned, as I was working with my clients, the data just fell out in front of me. And I developed these scales as I went along. But I didn't realize until '95 that this was a separate subject. So, a lot of energy went into crafting the book. Now, one of the things I did to help the semantic barrier that exists for everybody to some degree is I put a glossary in front of every chapter. I even put a glossary in front of the introduction. Descartes said, if you will argue with me, define your terms. So I defined my terms. For example, one of the scales is called the scale of communication. That one scale alone, if you could use it, will dramatically change your life. But you can reasonably say, well, if you look up communication, it has like 35 definitions. Which one are you using? So I give a specific definition, or one-line definition. So there's no ambiguity. And I did that for every scale. So there are 35 scales in the book, each of which has 7 levels, and there are 245 different levels, each of which had to be verified experimentally. And I verified them redundantly. And then I had the ongoing challenge of expressing it. Now, one of the real problems here was figuring out what axis I was describing by the scale. In other words, since I found the scales empirically, it was not obvious. In fact, it was not even apparent what axis this was on. You see, each of these scales is an axis against which to evaluate human phenomena. So, I had to look at the scales and say, what am I measuring here? For example, there's a scale of equanimity. Equanimity is one of the most important traits in human being. 95% of the problems that people have is because of a failure of equanimity. You know, a guy comes over and says, your girlfriend is ugly. You get upset, you get into a fist fight. That's because you lack equanimity. A person who has a lot of equanimity will not be flustered. And there's a scale, there are 7 levels of equanimity. Now, if you look at the book, you'll see that they look like scales of maturity. I thought it was a scale of maturity. It took me many years to figure out the underlying axis was equanimity. When we look at a person and we describe him as being immature, we're saying he lacks equanimity. So I had to coax that information out of the scale. Now, because these are naturally occurring, meaning they're mathematical in nature, I was able to do that. Getting a publisher was a much bigger problem than I thought, because right from day one, people told me things like, it's great, it's brilliant, we love it, this will change the planet, and things like that. I got that continuously. So I thought, well, okay, I'll get a publisher. And I went to about 400 publishers and about 400 literary agents. Nobody would touch it. And many of them were extremely complimentary. Many of them said, "This is brilliant. This is very interesting, but we're not going to take it on." And the common denominator of all of this was, "We don't know what to do with this." Well, I could have told them that it was a new subject. So what do you do with a new subject? If it was in a slot, they would have published it. But nobody would touch it because it was brand new. It was something that had never existed before. So that was dismaying. So I decided, after wasting a year on that I would just self-publish it, which I did. Then we got into the problem of promotion. Okay, so we have this book, it's out. How do you promote this one? Because really, until I started promoting it, nobody on earth had really any idea what this was. So how do you start a conversation with somebody about something that they have no concept of? That's difficult. So I learned by doing a lot of interviews how to express it succinctly, quickly. So I recommend that. Whatever you're writing, you want to be able to explain it to people in the first 10 or 15 minutes. This is what it's about. And you want to say something that's going to connect with them. They're going to say, "Ah, yes, I get it." The obvious question that people ask, "Well, what is this book like?" And I would tell them, "Well, there's never been a book like this before. But I can tell you this. Each of these 35 scales is expressed in what you might call a table or a spreadsheet. And each scale is very much like the periodic table of elements. Now, before Mendeleev invented the periodic table, there was chemistry. But he revolutionized it by taking all the elements, putting them on one page in correct relationship to one another. And that has never been questioned. As the generations passed, scientists just kept fitting more elements in the right place where Mendeleev predicted they would be. So each one of these 35 scales is like a periodic table for the corresponding subject. For example, there's a scale of thought. There are only 7 levels of human thought. Anything else is an apparency or is a subset. Now, the fact that there are only 7 levels seems like it's a limitation, but it's actually not. It's actually a benefit. If I were to stop a guy on the street and say, "What's your wife's motivation?" He would say, "What are you talking about? How could I possibly know that? There could be thousands." But actually, I determined that there are only 7 basic motivations. There's a scale of motivation. And when you narrow it down to 7, it's not that hard. So I had to sort of express this in a way that would connect with people. So I had a variety of readers of all types, some of them well-educated, some of them not so well-educated. Every single person who ever read the book had a very positive response. Now I want to talk about the writing process of this. Now, the scales themselves I had in 1995. Once I knew what I was looking for, all these scales went to 7 levels and they all had mathematical implications, and so that's where I started from. And then I had the challenge of expressing it, explaining to somebody something they've never even thought about before. This is not an easy thing to do. So I spent a lot of time thinking about this, rewriting it, restructuring it. Now, it was interesting that the responses that I got from literary agents and from publishers, to the extent that I got any response at all, was extremely positive. But they still wouldn't touch it. So I went to academic publishers, commercial publishers, all kinds of literary agents. And many of them, to the extent that they commented at all, the comments were extremely positive and encouraging, but they still wouldn't touch it. So this is something you need to think about with your book. You have to promote it. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. Fortunately, we have the internet now. And so I've done interviews with people all over the world. I've done about 70 interviews. And I have another 20 booked. People from India, Germany, Africa. And so it's a different challenge with each person. So in each case, I'm being thrown into something. I don't even know this person and what they think, what their take on it is, and I have to deal with it. And I have to tell them. I have to be able to respond. So that's an important thing. If you're going to write a book, you want to be able to have a way of expressing it to somebody quickly. This is what it's about. This is why you should publish it. This is unique. This is why you should read it. We need to have that rhetoric. Because getting people to actually read a book today is a big thing. Because we live in a world in which literacy is dramatically decaying. There are 1.5 billion people who speak English, but about half of them are not what you would call readers. So that's something you need to think about. Now, okay, so I finally self-published the book, and I got a lot of reviews, I got a lot of journalistic evaluations of it, and I put it all on a website. So that's another thing you need. The book needs to have its own website. So if you don't have a website, get busy. Assuming you have a book first. You need to have a website. Because you have to have a place to send people that when they look at it, they will get what you want them to get quickly. Because the attention span of people has been going down in recent years. You know, somebody will look at the website and you get like 3 minutes. And if you don't connect with them in 3 minutes, you're out. They go to the next thing. They go get a beer. So you have to be, I had a professionally done website by a top designer who works for big corporations who said, okay, this color, this type style will work. And pretty much that's what's been happening. People go to the website and say, wow, I see. Now when I talk to people, I get the same, I see, very interesting. So it's still a challenge to get anybody to read any book. But in this case, I had a lot of other hurdles. Now, one of the things you have to realize is that I'm trying to express a new subject that nobody has ever heard of before that is based on natural law. So on the one hand, if I get somebody to look at it, they say, wow, this is what I've been looking for. But getting them to look at it is the problem. And really all writers have that problem. So you have to present it in a way that is going to connect with people. So they will want to see it. They will want to read it. Because no matter how good the book is, if you can't do that, nobody's going to hear about it. You're going to be like the tree that falls in the forest and doesn't make a sound because there's nobody there to hear it. So I'm just trying to give you the benefit of my struggles with this. So I'm sort of at a point now where, on the one hand, it's almost impossible to get somebody to look at it. And on the other hand, when somebody does look at it, it's like a 99% home run, which is an interesting place to be. It's kind of an odd place to be. And I don't know what type of writers you are, but I'll be happy to talk about that when we get to that part of the discussion. So I'm going to wrap it up here, and you people can have your groups, and I'll come around, and anybody who has questions or comments can direct them to me, and I'll be happy to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. You think this man has some persistence? Yeah. So if you have questions about how to get on a podcast, how to get on a radio show, how to self-publish, the level of persistence, right? Any of these things that he discussed. So when he floats around, then you will have your chance to ask him any questions.